Hello, Kenny and Jillian. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us back.
Hi.
My pleasure. We looked it up, Kenny. You were on September of 23, so 2 years. Well, no, 1 year and a little bit. Yeah, okay. And the last time you were on, you were pitching one of your Greeking Out books. Do you remember which one it was? The last
It
one?
was this one, the very first Greeking Out book, epic retellings of classic Greek myths.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
now you've got a new one out called
It's this
Heroes
one.
and Olympians. Yeah, okay. Just
That's
as a
right.
refresher, give us a little bit of the backstory of the Greeking Out series.
Well, Greeking Out is based on the podcast from National Geographic Kids, National Geographic Kids Greeking Out. It's a podcast where we retell Greek myths for kids and families. And the podcast went so well that it spawned a book series. And in each book, we actually, have about 20 myths that we retell for kids and families. And we use all of the resources at National Geographic Kids with great margin facts and a takeaway to provide the context for each myth and some amazing illustrations from Javier Espila. And so that was the first book. A year later, we have come out with Greeking Out, book 2, Heroes and Olympians. And in this book, we focus a little bit more. We go a little deeper into the stories of specific Greek gods and specific Greek heroes.
Okay, well, let's see. Zeus, Apollo, Mercury?
Hermes.
Hermes.
Mercury's the Roman version, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And
So many names.
okay, now, do both of you work for National Geographic, or are you just sort of on consignment with them?
Yeah, we just work with them. We don't work for them.
Right.
So.
Okay, so they have consigned you to do these books, basically.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let me find out a little bit about Jillian, since this is your first time on the show. Can you give us just a little bit of your backstory? What else do you do besides this, or is this your full-time job?
Oh, keeping Kenny in line is my full-time job. No, fun fact, Kenny is my dad, so we've been working together for a very long time. But in addition to doing this, I do a lot of other rating things. I started out in marketing, and then when this opportunity came along, it just seemed like a good fit because they needed someone for the podcast to write in Kenny's voice, and I have heard Kenny's voice for a very long time, so I was an expert. And it's been really fun to do this, and then we got to do the books, so yeah, it's been great.
She's being modest. She's a heck of a writer. She's also a poet. She writes a lot of poetry. It's a lot of great words coming from this one. She's much more of a wordsmith than I am. I just sort of talk and write like I talk. She actually is a writer.
Well, how do you do the research for this? I mean, how do you start with this? Do you just go to Wikipedia and look up the actual Greek gods and the sort of the technical data, or
Yeah, only occasionally. Don't give away any trade secrets here. No, I think we have a meeting with our producer, Emily Everhart, for the podcast. And for the book, we'll have a meeting with the editors, Katie Moore and Kate Hale, the people that have worked with us on developing the book series. And we'll kick around ideas, some that we know, some that we don't. But one of the great things about it is when you're researching one idea and one story, you wind up researching like 7 because they kind of one kind of leads to the other. I mean, I have a bit of a background of knowledge just because I'm old and remember reading the Edith Hamilton stuff, and I played Dungeons and Dragons before it was on, computers, stuff like that. But I still think that one story about one character will lead to another when you're doing the research. So you file away, oh, this isn't the story about Apollo that we want, but I definitely want to do that story about Apollo finding the Oracle at Delphi later because that's cool.
And we have experts on the staff that they're, professors that do this, that study, mythology and teach it to college students. And National Geographic uses them to check our work. So right. I just want to make sure that it is verified by people that are way more well-trained and qualified to discuss this stuff than we are.
Right.
So which came first, the book or the podcast?
It is a very long story, but originally National Geographic had a fiction book called Zeus the Mighty.
Right.
And in that book, it's about like animals in a pet store. And the animals in the pet shop are listening to a podcast. And the podcast is called Greeking Out. So to market that book, they decided it would be fun to make the actual Greeking Out podcast and sort of use that as a promo for the book. And then the podcast just became so popular and well received that it kept going. And then eventually it became so successful that they were like, hey, let's turn this podcast into a book. So it was a book that became a podcast that became a book. It's a real full circle moment.
Podcast is kind of, and no disrespect, and I do the same thing. But podcast is kind of a throwaway term. I'm just trying to get an idea of what your show. It almost sounds like it's like Orson Welles' Mercury Theater type old radio. Is that what you're doing?
Well, it's a bit more straightforward narrative than that. I mean, we're retelling these stories in a contemporary manner for kids. It isn't quite the theater of the mind that Orson Welles was going for, and that you get when you listen to classic radio or old time radio theater. But it's very narrative driven. We are really trying to hook these kids in by telling them a story. So it feels a bit maybe like a bedtime story or a nap time story, or just, a little bit of a break from the constant onslaught of images and sounds that kids get in sort of our manic media society. It's one of the great things about podcasts, and one of the great things about storytelling is this is just the kids listening to a story. And so it does have this kind of direct connection. And if the story's strong enough and good enough, I believe that the kids really get sucked into it. We use a lot of humor and a lot of devices and music and sound effects to keep that going. But these aren't full cast recordings. This is, kind of the power of stories and storytelling, which of course it harkens back to the source material, because that's how the Greeks originally created these stories. That's how these stories were passed down from generation to generation. They were told years and years and years, hundreds, maybe thousands of years before they were ever written down.
Do you do this live?
We do live versions of it. Yeah, we went to WBUR's podcast event in Boston. We've done that before. We did it live at Comic-Con. So yes, we do live versions of this as well, but the podcast itself is pre-recorded.
Okay, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but this sounds like a sort of a cross between what Orson Welles and the old time radio were doing and an audiobook.
Yeah, I would go with that. Sure.
Is that
maybe
accurate?
With a dash of Prairie Home Companion thrown in.
I'm sorry, what?
Maybe with a dash of Prairie Home Companion thrown in.
Prairie Home, okay. I don't follow that one. Is that like a Midwestern joke or something?
Yeah, that's a Garrison Keillor.
Okay. Just the fact that I don't understand it is funny enough, I think.
I like that about you, Douglas. Thank you.
There's something on here that your people sent to me that I'm just going to read it, and maybe either one of you can respond to it. The world's most perfect animal according to the gods.
Yes. So that is a story we talk about. It's called Love at First Horse. And I guess I just gave it away. The horse is the world's most perfect animal, but it's about Poseidon, the god of the sea. He's trying to impress a girl, the goddess Demeter, and she's not feeling it. And she says, like, if you make me the world's most perfect animal, I'll go out with you. So he makes all different types of animals, makes the octopus and the zebra, and then he ends up with the horse, and that is the winner. That's the world's most perfect animal. So she goes out with him after making the.
Well, I would have to agree. I mean, I used to own a horse many years ago and would ride him, and till he got.
I know, they're great, right?
Yeah, they're fantastic. I think dogs come in there as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. How do you like working together? Is there any fighting that goes on between you two over content, or who's the boss in this writing team here?
I'm the boss.
You're the
I'm the boss.
Okay.
I don't think we fight too much. I mean,
Yeah.
the best part about, not the best part, but with these myths have been told for thousands of years. So we really try to stay true to the source materials. So we're not really arguing over, plot points or anything like that. We're working with what we got. But there's times where we'll be like, that joke's not funny, or don't say it this way. And, because we are family, there's a level of trust, and we know we're not gonna, say anything that's gonna really offend the other person, or if they do, they'll get over it 5 minutes later. So we're stuck together, and I think that's a good thing in terms of having a good writing relationship.
I think it's an advantage more than it is a disadvantage. I think we just sort of know how to do certain things. Jillian was roped into doing this because we needed another writer who could write in the same tone that I was writing in the previous scripts. And tone is really important in this podcast because, we have a lot of humor, there's a lot of comedy, a lot of irony, but also we're speaking to kids and families. So you have to kind of make sure that everything that you're doing is on a certain level. And Jillian gets that right away because she's been listening to me talk for a long time.
Yeah.
So that made it easier, but I think she's taken it to another level in terms of really adding the sophistication and the effective storytelling in both the podcast and the book.
Do you plan on a third book or a fourth or a fifth, or how long is this going to go on?
We'll keep riding this world's most perfect animal horse for as long as we can. But yes, there is a third book that will be coming out, and I believe a fourth. So we have next year at this time, we'll be talking again, I hope.
Okay, you've got the latest book there. Can you hold it up? Actually, would love to see one of the illustrations. If you could open it up and just point it at the camera. I'd like to see what it looks like.
Okay, here's Athena's perfect gift here. Can you see that?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, Javier Espila is an amazing illustrator. That's a picture of Athena. Athena and Poseidon had a competition to see who would get to have the naming rights for the city of Athens before it was called Athens, and obviously Athena won. She gave them the olive tree, and Poseidon gave them water. I think he gave them
water, but it was salty.
But it was
so
seawater.
No one wanted it.
Yeah, nobody wanted it, so they couldn't use it for anything. So yeah, Athena won.
So he's done all the illustrations. How did you find him?
National Geographic hooked us up with him, and I had never met him, didn't know him, and honestly, he lives in Spain, so we still haven't met him, but we have a great email, social media back and forth with him, and he's just delightful. He really has. He listened to the podcast before he did the drawings, and he gets the tone of what we're trying to do so intuitively.
Yes,
it's really nice. The illustrations are sort of like, I don't know, would you say comic booky, but also cartoonish?
Yeah, no, it's amazing to me that he was able to capture the essence of the humor of the story that we were trying to tell. And yeah, it was, I don't even know, an experience seeing the pictures for the first time for the first book, because it was like, this is what I've been picturing in my head, and it's right there on paper. So he's great. He does a phenomenal job.
So is the latest book, Heroes and Olympians, has it been released?
It is. It's out now. It was a New York Times bestseller. Both of these books actually were on the New York Times bestseller list, which is amazing and mind-blowing. But yeah, this one is out now, and you can order it. Same place you ordered the previous book. You can get it in most major bookstores, minor booksellers too have
wherever
it.
Books are sold.
Wherever books are sold. If you bought a National Geographic book there before, you should be able to get this one there. And of course, you can order it online, your Amazons, etc.
And where can people hear the podcast?
Wherever you get your favorite flavor of podcast, we're on there. We're working on season 11 now, but we got 10 seasons up and available, however you like to listen to your podcast.
So you're on all the major ones, Apple and
Spotify,
iHeart,
everywhere.
Spotify, all those. Okay. Do you have a website that you want to give out at all?
Well, National Geographic Kids is a great website for all things Nat Geo Kids. And of course, they have a Greeking Out section there. And I think you can go there and learn more about both the podcast and the books as well. That's probably the best place to go. Jillian and I have a small company called finkincmedia.com, which is where we do our separate things. That's not necessarily for, that would be mostly for people who are looking to get to know more about what we do as individual performers. If you want Greeking Out stuff, go to the National Geographic Kids site, and you can learn so much. It's a fun site to go to anyway.
Well, I think on that, Kenny and Jillian, we're going to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And
thank you.
Nice
Thank you for having
us
us again.
And best of luck. And we look forward to number 3. Do you have a date at all for number 3 yet? Or
not formally, but it should be around this time probably September of 25.
Well, maybe we'll see you again in another year.
That would be great.
All right, guys, take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bye-bye.